Hi there, I hope you're well. In this video we're going to take a look at the revised Peanut 2 MiniJig to see what kind of changes that have been made to it. Now, I've talked about the Peanut 2 system in detail before, and I've used it for builds and in the Cabinetry Basics series of videos, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the system itself. If you are new to the system, there's a Peanut 2 playlist that has all the Peanut 2 videos, the jigs and the projects all in one place, so that's a great place to start. I'll link that up down below in the video description. In the interest of transparency, this unit has been supplied for review by Intelligent Fixings. I haven't been paid to make this video or to say nice things about the product, but I am a member of their affiliate scheme, so if you're thinking of making a purchase, then using the links in the video description down below will benefit the channel at no additional cost to yourselves, so thank you so much to the folks who do just that. Just to recap quickly though, the Peanut 2 is a small plastic dowel that's drilled into the edge of a board and a keyhole shaped slot routed into the corresponding face of a board with a proprietary cutter, and due to some clever and patented design and engineering, the Peanut tightens itself as it's inserted into the slot, so it produces a very strong self-clamping joint that leaves no visible marks on the workpiece. The original Peanut 2 jig was very much aimed at cabinetry in the workshop, whereas the Peanut 2 MiniJig is a much smaller and highly portable version that can also be used on site. It's also significantly cheaper, making it much more accessible. When I first featured this back in February, it was a very impressive piece of kit. One of the great things about working with smaller responsive companies like Intelligent Fixings is that they do react to suggestions and comments, and since February there's been a few revisions to this jig. This isn't the MiniJig Mark II or anything like that, but I just wanted to go through some of those changes that have been made to the MiniJig because they're quite significant and they really do increase the range of connectors that you can now use with the MiniJig. Let's take a quick look. So there's been a few little revisions made to the jig, 5 or 6 of them, some of them quite small, some of them quite significant. We'll start with the sort of smaller ones first. When I first got my hands on the jig, I mean, it's really nice and really well thought out and well designed, with clearly marked clamping areas where your clamp will be out of the way of the router as you're routing the slots. One thing I did find is that whilst the clamp areas were fine for relatively small headed clamps like these, they were a little bit on the small side for if you were using a bigger clamp like a one-handed Betty clamp like this. And what Intelligent Fixings have done is that they've actually increased the size of the jig very slightly to give you slightly bigger clamping areas. It's not much, it's only about 10 or 12 mil either side, but it's just enough to give you a little bit more elbow room, and it makes it much easier, much more comfortable to clamp. The other thing they've done is that they've changed the shape very slightly. I don't know if you can see on this one. They brought these little sort of horns in slightly tighter, again only by 10 mil or so, and that's a big help because this middle piece in the center here is used as a depth gauge for setting your router plunge depth. And to be honest, on the original jig it was just a little bit tight to get the smaller 1/4 inch router bases onto that. Bringing those in a little bit closer makes it much easier to deal with. We've also got center lines scribed on the jig now as well, both side to side and top and bottom. This is particularly useful when you're using it off the fence. So for example, on a mid-panel connector, because it was quite hard to eyeball. Not hard, it's just a little bit fiddly. Much easier to have a center line scribed so you can line the whole jig up nice and easily. I found I was sort of eyeballing it through the gravity pinholes, which is not ideal. And in the same vein, when you're using the jig flat like that, perhaps for a mid-panel fixing, one of the problems that I found was that it was quite hard to clamp the jig down because the jig is in the middle of the panel, it's away from the edges, you haven't got a clamp that's big enough, and I was doing all kinds of elaborate schemes, bits of board that were clamped at the edges and things. One of my Patreon supporters suggested that you could just screw it down, and that's actually the perfect solution. It's exactly what you can do, and Intelligent Fixings are now providing countersunk screw points for this. Obviously on a mid-panel fixing, when you screw that in place, the panel will cover the screw holes when it's fitted. So that's a big help as well. So the next revision is a little bit more significant. You've always been able to use the Peanut 2 MiniJig as a dowel jig, of course, because it comes with a 6mm bushing a 6mm insert for when you're drilling out the holes for the peanut 2 connectors. So you could use 6mm dowels straight away. You can also get inserts for 8mm dowels now as well, and also for 10mm dowels. And to the best of my knowledge, it's also the only dowel jig that can actually put dowels in into a mitre joint as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but I can't think of a single one. So a very, very useful dowel jig as well. You could just purchase the jig just to use it as a dowel jig and then add in the peanut functionality later on if you wanted to. There's one other change which again seems relatively insignificant when you think about it. They've actually increased the size of the slot very slightly, so you do get a slightly longer throw on the peanut T-slot. That's really useful in itself, because I think when I was making my hat and coat rack, I ended up having to put the pegs on the other way around because there wasn't enough travel in the connector. Originally there was only 12mm of travel in the connector. There's a little bit more now, so making it much more useful. But possibly more useful again is that you can now use this Peanut 2 mini jig for cutting loose tenons for making domino joinery, and that's what I'm going to be doing next. I haven't actually tried this yet. I'll be doing this for the first time right here on this video, so let's get into that right now. But before we get to that, I just want to say a huge thank you to my YouTube members and Patreon supporters. It's the support that I receive from the channel members that really helps me to keep the lights on here and to keep making the content that I want to make, and as well as the rosy glow that channel members receive from supporting the channel, they also have access to the back catalogue of free plans and ad-free versions of the public-facing videos. Channel members also have a weekly Week in the Workshop vlog-style video where I chat about whatever's been going on that week with some behind-the-scenes and over-the-shoulder type video as well as discussions of future plans and projects. Channel members also receive a 20% discount on all 10-minute workshop products. There's a new batch of these coming this weekend, I hope, to my Etsy, and they also have early access to these products, which is probably why these are always in short supply. If any or all of that sounds like your kind of thing, then do come and join us as part of the 10-minute workshop team. We'd love to have you on board and taking part. But that's enough of that for now. Let's get on and cut some mortises. So if you're familiar with Festool's Domino, with the loose tenons in general, you'll probably know what's coming. If you're not, then a loose tenon is basically like a mortise and tenon, but it's two mortises connected by a tenon that is loose, sometimes called a floating tenon, because it's not physically connected to either of the workpieces. What we've got here are two pieces of board, two bits of MDF, exactly the same size, and we're going to basically join these in a simple L shape, just as you would for the side and base of a cabinet, say. And just as a little memory aid, I'll mark on these. We're doing the face here, and we'll do the edge here. There's no measuring needed here. I'm just using the standard gravity pins to reference off the edges of the board, and clamping the jig down, making sure the clamps are outside the marked areas. I fitted a 30mm guide bush in the router and centered it with a mandrel. And I'm using a 5mm spiral upcut bit to cut the face slots in a single pass. Edge slots next, and again locating the jig with the gravity pins, clamping it down and cutting the mortise in a single pass. So, proof of the pudding time. I've got a couple of 5x30mm dominoes. I did clear out the mortises very slightly with the vacuum. Every time I do this kind of thing, it really makes me appreciate how good the Festool dust extraction is on the domino. Normally with a spiral upcut bit, it really helps with the extraction. Didn't do a great deal this particular time. Didn't do badly. It wasn't impacted like it has been with a straight bit, but I would always recommend using a spiral upcut bit if you're going to use it for cutting mortises. Anyway, let's pop these two in. These are regular 5x30mm Festool dominoes. In that side, we've got referenced off that side and that edge, so they should just go in very, very nicely. That is nice and flush all around. Very good. One thing I didn't mention earlier on is that when you're using the Peanut 2 MiniJig for domino mortises, for loose tenon mortises, you've got to have the little gravity pins, the little reference pins, symmetrical either side of the slot. Normally they're offset slightly one way or the other, but you can use both positions, so it gives you the option to vary how close to the edge you actually get it. But no, that is literally the first time I've used one of these for a domino, a loose tenon. So yeah, very very impressed with that. So there we go, that's what Intelligent Fixings have been up to over the last 8 months or so. They haven't been sitting idly on their hands basking in the glory of the Peanut 2 MiniJig. They've been quietly responding to comments and suggestions and making those improvements. Of course, the flip side of innovative small British companies that react to comments and suggestions is that you might be an early adopter saying, hang on a minute, I bought one of those only 8 months ago and I'll be left behind. I can't have all the cool stuff that you now get with the Peanut 2 MiniJig. And yes, to an extent, that's absolutely true. The jig did exactly and still does exactly what you bought it to do, but there have been improvements made. What Intelligent Fixings are doing, though, they've got a small number of original shape Peanut 2 MiniJigs, and they've remachined them to take advantage of the loose tenon and the center markings. Now, it's body only, so they're only of any use to existing original Peanut 2 MiniJig owners, because you need to use the same fence and guide bush inserts that you've got already, but they're available on Intelligent Fixings website. There is limited supply of these because they don't have many of this particular shape left, but they are available for, I believe, £35. So if that's something that interests you, if you really want to get into loose tenon joinery using your existing Peanut 2 MiniJig, the original version, then you can do that for just 35 quid, which I think is pretty reasonable, to be perfectly honest, for a jig of this quality, to be able to get the whole new body remachined to take advantage of the loose tenon joinery. I think that's a pretty decent thing to do. There's a link down in the video description below if that's something that interests you. Other than that, I think we're done for this one. I think it's a great upgrade. It really does make it one of the most versatile jigs around. I think I said earlier, you could actually buy this bare without the starter pack and use it simply as a dowel jig or a loose tenon jig, and then when the time comes that you need something that's a knockdown fixing, then you can upgrade to the Peanut 2 starter pack and get the bit and a selection of Peanut 2s as well. I think it's a great thing that Intelligent Fixings have done. But I'll leave it there, I think, for this week. Thank you very much indeed for taking a look. Thank you as well to Intelligent Fixings for giving me the opportunity to take a look at this latest version of the Peanut 2 MiniJig. Thank you, as always, to my amazing Patreon supporters and YouTube members. But that's it for this one. Thanks for taking a look. I'll see you in the next one. All right, take care.